Now to encouraging news in the global battle against AIDS. This Sunday marked World AIDS Day, with the United Nations reporting that more and more people have access to anti-retroviral treatment. New infections globally were estimated at 2.3 million in 2012, which the UN says is a 33% reduction since 2001. As a continent, Africa is affected by AIDS more than any other region in the world, and more than 2/3 of all people infected with the virus live there. My next guest is America's ambassador to South Africa, where more than 6 million people, or 10% of the entire population, are infected with HIV. The United States is a big financial backer of AIDS treatment programs there, and South Africa has the largest anti-retroviral program in the world. Still, there's work to be done. More people are living with HIV in South Africa today than 10 years ago. Now, Ambassador Patrick Gaspard joins me from Johannesburg. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining me from Johannesburg.
Thank you so very much for having me on, Christiane, at this important juncture in our relationship.
Well, let me just go straight to the AIDS situation. As you know very well,
Yes.
Many people around the world were not so keen on President George Bush's popularity or his foreign policy. But the one thing many people gave him credit for was PEPFAR, the AIDS-related help that his administration spearheaded. And obviously, we've seen a lot of reaction from that. Now, in South Africa, since President Obama came to office, PEPFAR funding has gone down, and people with HIV are going up. Why now? Why are we reducing PEPFAR funding to South Africa?
Well, Christiane, first I'll acknowledge the history. You're absolutely right that, to his everlasting credit, President Bush led a bipartisan effort to bring extraordinary relief to the African continent. And of course, Americans are always called to do extraordinary things against great odds, and much has been accomplished. And I will tell you, Christiane, that over the last few years, President Obama has initiated ambitious goals PEPFAR, for PEPFAR, for instance. He declared a few short years ago that we should try to get 6 million individuals on antiretrovirals, and that we should attempt to get 1.6 million pregnant women access to care as well, so that they don't communicate the disease to their children. And I'm proud to say that we've reached the president's goals. We've exceeded those goals. And here in South Africa, where the U.S. has invested over $4 billion over the last decade, we've managed to bring the new rate of infection down 32%, and only 3% of HIV-positive pregnant women are transmitting the disease to their children. Without any intervention, that rate would be over 30%. So much was done at the inception of PEPFAR, and President Obama has continued that commitment.
You're absolutely right. The commitment continues, but let me again tell you the statistics, that under President Obama, the funding has decreased, and yet the number of people infected has increased quite dramatically in the last decade. So I just trying to figure out why. Why now?
Yeah, that's not quite the story, Christiane. If you look at the commitment globally, the United States represents 64% of all contributions to HIV/AIDS programs globally. 64%. And look at what's happened here in South Africa. You're right. That the United States investment has declined slowly and will continue to do so over the next few years, but that's only because the government of South Africa has assumed its full responsibility. And right now, the South African government has taken on ownership of 80% of HIV/AIDS funding in this country. So it's only natural that the U.S. Contribution would go down. But as a result of what we're doing together, South Africa and the sub-Saharan region has actually become a model for innovation on HIV. We've managed to bring down the cost of delivering ARVs to an individual from $100 a month to $10 a month here in South Africa. That has profound implications for this economy, for the regional economy, and it's a model that countries all around the world are beginning to study and emulate. So our commitment here is steadfast. It's deep, and we're transitioning from providing frontline care to providing long-term infrastructure for health care throughout this country.
Well, again, we will hopefully we'll see those numbers of infections come down. But let me move on to a bigger picture. South Africa is in transition.
They've come down 34%, Christian.
Okay. Mr. Ambassador, there are 5.26 million people infected with HIV in South Africa today, compared with 4 million a decade ago. But let's not argue over statistics. Let's just move on. I want to ask you about the transition that's happening there right now. And you're there at an amazingly important time. First and foremost, does your administration, do you feel that once the inevitable transition, the heroic and inspirational and moral leadership of Nelson Mandela, passes on when he eventually passes on, do you believe that the current politics can cope with all the amazing challenges that there are in South Africa right now? And there are a lot of problems. Not least the massive inequality between, rich and poor that seems to be getting bigger.
No doubt that Nelson Mandela, who's in our thoughts and prayers right now, was an extraordinary and transformative figure. But Christian, if you're here on the ground in Johannesburg or in Durban or Cape Town, you'll find that there's a vibrant, thriving democracy throughout the country. There's a probing civil society. There's an active and engaged and critical media. So I would say that democracy is alive and well here in South Africa, and will continue to be for future generations, and that's why we're seeing the kind of economic stability, security, and growth here in the region as well. I'd also add that in a few short months, South Africans themselves will be able to litigate this question in their national elections next spring, and I dare say that they're going to have a vibrant debate about the question of where things are going. But just for a second, Christian, to go back to your broader question about AIDS and statistics, you're right. Statistics don't tell the story. I think the story is better told through stories like the story of a woman I met named Lizzie Shibonga, who lives here in Joburg, who in 2005 went on retrovirals because of PEPFAR, and now she's raising children who are graduating from college, who are contributing to this economy. So there's much work to be done. You're right about that, but so much extraordinary accomplishment.
You're absolutely right. It is incredible how many lives have been saved. But let me ask you precisely about that economy. When President Obama was in Africa not so long ago, a few months ago, he spoke, in South Africa and elsewhere about another great necessity, and that is the necessity to fight against corruption. Let me play you what he said when he was in South Africa.
We know that progress is uneven. Across Africa, the same institutions that should be the backbone of democracy can all too often be infected with the rot of corruption.
Now, Ambassador, that's clearly a problem in South Africa. We've been reporting on it for a long time. And as you probably know, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of criticism about President Zuma, particularly over this big estate that he has. And a huge amount of money has been used for that. He's said that it's just for security, but there have been many instances where it has been the money used, taxpayer money, for other issues. What can you say to that? What can the U.S. do to encourage your partners in South Africa, the president, this party right now, to really fight and lead by example against corruption?
I'm happy to see here, Christian, that there's actually a thriving debate inside of the ranks of government and in the majority party, the African National Congress, on the question of transparency, accountability, and all that needs to be done to push back the scourge of corruption. On the question you asked, the public protector in this country has yet to issue a final report on that question, but we should be encouraged by the fact that there is a public protector in South Africa who operates independently of the presidency and the legislature. So there are checks and balances that exist here that are healthy, that are robust, and that are elevating all of the right questions. And there's also a deep foundation, a deep reservoir of democratic principles throughout South Africa society. President Obama is, of course, right that an economy cannot thrive with corruption. A people cannot thrive with corruption. That's a challenge that exists here in sub-Saharan Africa. But as you well know, that's been a challenge in the United States as well that we rise to meet every day.
Well, we look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining me. We look forward to having you on again.
Thank you so very much.